to this month's Plated Up Kentucky Proud Recipe segment. My name is Kelly Burgess and I'm the Family Consumer Sciences Extension Agent with the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service in Allen County. Today we are making a wonderful spring and summer recipe. It is called Berry and Basil Pizza Crisp with honey balsamic glaze. So I know that's a mouthful, but it pretty much does tell you everything that's included in this recipe. So I'll just go over our ingredients real quick. We are going to be starting out with half a cup of balsamic vinegar, 3 tablespoons of local honey, if you are able to find some local honey near you. We have slices of Havarti cheese. We have flatbreads. You can find these anywhere in your local grocery store. You might see it labeled as naan, but any kind of those flatbreads that you can add things to. We have 1.5 cups of chopped up strawberries, about 15 leaves of basil, and 1 cup of blackberries that are cut in half. So it's very basic ingredients. This is an easy recipe that you can do with kids at home because there's not a whole lot of cooking per se that is involved. So I wanted to go ahead and get started with one part of the recipe that takes just a little bit longer to do, and that's making our honey balsamic glaze. So as you can see, I have a small saucepan here, and I'm going to add our half cup of balsamic vinegar. And I'm also going to add 3 tablespoons of our honey. I have a little spatula here to help me out. And as you can see, I've already made some of the glaze because this is going to simmer for about 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and put this up on a low to medium heat. So my stove has 1 through 6, so I'm putting it on about a 3 to get started. And I'm just going to stir that around a little bit. So that'll start to get really fragrant. And how you know that it is done is it starts to reduce its volume. So instead of starting with almost a cup of liquid, we're going to end up with about half a cup of liquid total. So it gets a little bit thicker, and as those flavors blend together, it gives you that sweet and tangy all at the same time. So our next step, while this is just doing its own thing over here on the stove, is we have our flatbreads. So I wanted to talk a little bit about these. As you can see, I have a couple different kinds. So these lighter colored pieces are just regular, they're not whole grain, but it came as one big longer piece. And so to make it more like individual personal pan pizza style, I went ahead and cut those into smaller pieces. But they also sell ones that are more individual. And these ones are actually ancient grains. You'll find some that are whole grains. So it's just a matter of what flavor you like for your pizza. So I've gone ahead and spread those out on cookie sheets because we will be baking those in the oven at 400 degrees. The bake time is very short, so thankfully you don't have long to wait until you're ready for your pizza. But it's a very simple process. The first thing that we're going to do is start by putting 1 slice of cheese on each of our flatbreads, and thankfully those fit just about perfectly. For our larger ones, I might end up adding a little bit more than 1 slice. The recipe, what it is made for, is 6 servings. So depending on what size of flatbreads you have, you know, if they're smaller, you might just cut them in half for a serving. If they're a little bit larger, like I said, I had to cut mine into about 4 pieces to make each one. But I'm gonna go ahead and just add a little extra cheese because we gotta have full coverage here. And so we'll be putting this cheese. And as I mentioned, this is Havarti. The recipe mentions that you could do another type of cheese if you wanted. Move that out of the way. You could try Swiss, you could try mozzarella. I do think a lighter colored cheese, I probably wouldn't go with cheddar on this one, but maybe something like a provolone would also be tasty. So that's where it's kind of up to you and your own creativity in the kitchen, or based on what you have on hand might change what type of cheese you use. I'm going to give this a little stir over here as it's heating up. You might want to back your nose away from it a little bit when you stir it because the smells are pretty strong. But this is just going to add a nice little touch of flavor to our pizzas. So on to the stars of the show, which is our Kentucky Proud produce items. We have strawberries, which are in season April through June in Kentucky. Blackberries, which are a little bit later, June through August, So really we have our July, this is a perfect June-July recipe. So you can start thinking ahead a little bit with these ingredients. So I'm just gonna spread some of our strawberries and blackberries over each of our little pizza flatbreads. This is a great lunchtime meal to have. It's a little bit lighter. You'll notice there's no meat included. You could add, I was thinking about what would be great to have with this. You could have a salad, maybe a spinach salad, some romaine lettuce. You could also have, oops, dropped one. You could also do the true Italian fashion, if you've heard of prosciutto. It's a very thinly sliced ham that would be a great meat to have either on top of your pizza or on the side. Prosciutto is often served with cantaloupe or melons, which seemed a little bit odd to me at first, but once you try it, I promise it's really good. So you can think about what to serve with this. If you cut them into even smaller pieces, it would be a great appetizer before a larger meal. So we'll just spread those strawberries around. And we're getting a lot of nutrition with this recipe too. So anytime that we see things that are very colorful, we know that we're also getting a lot of vitamins and minerals that our body needs. So strawberries are very high in vitamin C. They're actually the highest in vitamin C of any of our berries, with 1/2 cup serving having 80% of our vitamin C, which is quite impressive. The other berries, blackberries also are high in vitamin C, as well as potassium and fiber. So when we eat these in combination, we're really fueling up our body with all kinds of great nutrients. Okay, I'm gonna stop with that. I might put a little more if time allows. And then our blackberries are halved, so we'll just spread those onto our flatbreads as well. They'll turn a little bit in the oven. When I first tried it out, they turn a little bit more of a purple color rather than that dark blackish blue purple. They turn a little bit lighter as they bake, similar to how they would look in a blackberry cobbler if you've had that before. And speaking of dessert, I just wanted to mention that this recipe is really fun and different because typically we think of berries as sweeter things, maybe not so much as part of a dinner entree. But what's really cool is that their flavors pair well with so many different things. So we really can incorporate them into any part of our meal. Berries are very popular at local farmers markets because they are a little bit fragile, as I like to say. They don't travel well or store very well. So if you have the opportunity to buy berries, strawberries or blackberries at a local farmers market, you'll probably notice a difference in the flavor and the quality of the fruits. So with the blackberries, you really want to eat them within just a few days of purchasing them. But if you can't, if they're in season and you can't eat them all right away, they do store well also. You can use the dry pack method for storing berries, which involves basically putting them out on a cookie sheet, putting that in the freezer until they're frozen, and then after they're frozen, immediately taking them out and putting them in a clear plastic bag and putting them back in the freezer for continued storage. So I'm gonna use up our last ones of these. When you're shopping for berries too, keep in mind what to look for on your package. You don't want a package that has stains because that indicates that the berry maybe is a little bit overripe. It might have molded or it might be smushed, and that would make the other berries in the package not last as long either. So if you do find yourself getting home with a package of berries that's not quite finished or that's not quite all of them perfect, just make sure to eat those ones first that seem to be a little bit further along. You'll now see me ripping up a few pieces of basil. Basil is also something that is found in lots of farmers markets, lots of home gardens, even in Tennessee and Kentucky. It's a summer herb that is in the mint family. It's very, very easy to grow. You can have basil plants that get quite large in your summer gardens. So there's nothing like stepping outside and just picking, a couple fresh leaves of basil to add to your dish. You can also buy it in the store. it's a little bit more expensive. So if you have a green thumb or you like gardening, I encourage you to try and grow some basil on your own. That way you have it fresh to just add to your flatbread pizzas or anything else that you might want to flavor. It's most popular for its use in Italian cooking. It's the major ingredient in pesto sauce. So you might have seen that at an Italian restaurant. It's often called basil pesto. That's the sweet basil. There's also other types of basil, so there's just different varieties that you can experiment with to incorporate different flavors into your meal. So you can smell it when you tear the leaves apart. It has a wonderful fresh smell whenever you're cooking with it. And it will wilt up. So the recipe actually calls for putting it on after the pizzas are baked. If you put it on after, it'll stay a little bit more in its leaf form, more solid. But I kind of wanted the pieces to be a little bit smaller, maybe not quite as noticeable, but still have the flavor. So that's why I've chosen to do an experiment and rip the pieces up a little bit smaller this time, and go ahead and put them on before I bake. So let's check on our sauce over here. It is thickening up nicely, but not quite finished yet. But thankfully, we have just one more step to go. We're gonna put these in the oven on 400 degrees for 5 to 7 minutes. I like to shoot the gap and try for 6 minutes, and that worked out perfectly for me. So based on your oven temperature, how it usually bakes, you'll know if you want to lean more on the 5-minute or the 7-minute side. But either way, that cheese is going to get melty, your berries will be warm, and when it comes out of the oven, our balsamic honey glaze should be done by then. And we can simply, I like to pour it in a liquid measuring cup because that makes it easy to drizzle over our flatbreads, and you can serve them warm. So as we always say, by the magic of TV, we have a few that are already made that we'd like to show you. This is a very tasty recipe, definitely perfect for spring, summer, and all the times coming up. Great for a light lunch. So if you'd like a copy of this recipe, if you want to try it at home, you can find this recipe by a couple of different ways. You can email berry.hyatt@nctc.com, or you can find it by searching Plate It Up Kentucky Proud in your Google search bar, or find Plate It Up Kentucky Proud on Facebook for this recipe and many others. So once again, thank you for joining us for this month's recipe segment, and we hope to see you again next time.